Hello. So today we are going to be starting a deep dive into the European Union. Uh, this was taken directly from the website for the European Union. So hopefully they've got their facts together. Looks all right to me looking through it, but let's take a look at what we've got. So the EU has 27 member states. Used to have 28. UK is gone. As you can see, the UK is not even highlighted. It's joined Norway and Iceland and Switzerland on the outs. And in my opinion, that's probably for the best. I think the EU is probably not heading in such a good direction, but we'll get into that a little later. So, how did this block get started? It was just supposed to be, believe it or not, a trading block, so that after the war, the French and the Germans and the Spanish and the English wouldn't have to pay tariffs, which are taxes on imported goods, uh, to get their goods over each other's borders. So remember, I told you at the beginning, and we've looked at this in depth, that free trade stops war, right? And this is a liberal idea that I subscribe to heavily. This is the idea. This was the idea behind the European Union. And they should have stuck to it, but they didn't. So after World War II, a bunch of leaders from around Europe. Yes, this is absolutely correct. He was a big proponent of the European Union, Mr. Churchill. He wanted peace in Europe, and he thought this was the way to do it. So Winston Churchill from Europe, Jean Monnet, Alcide de Gasperi, Simone Weil, Conrad Adenauer, Robert Schuman, and others. They got together. They proposed this project. Again, it was a trading block, as I explained, so that tariffs could just go away. It'd be a free trade zone. They thought that would help rebuild after the war and get Europe back on a better footing economically, so it wouldn't take so long to rebuild. So some of the symbols, again, symbols are important. They have the euro, that is their monetary unit. Here's the flag. There is a Europe Day. I'll be the first to admit, I didn't know there was a Europe Day until I was researching this lesson. The European anthem, that is the Ode to Joy from Beethoven's Ninth, and they are united in diversity. There are all these official languages. English is still an official language because Ireland is still a member state in the European Union, and the Irish, they speak English. And there's all of it. You can see. So how did this get its start? We are going to go over. Now this, I don't own the video. I'm showing it to you for educational purposes only. This is a very good explanation of how and why the EU started. I found it amusing because the guy sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger. But enjoy.
In today's episode, we'll be talking about early EU history from the World Wars until the European Community, so let's get to it. When the First World War ended, it was dubbed the War to End All Wars. After this war, nobody would even think about fighting another. World War II happened. It saw the deaths of over 50 million people, the Holocaust, and millions left without homes. This war changed world politics. After this war, all European powers were forced to give up their lucrative colonies over time and lost their status as world powers. After this war, an Iron Curtain split Europe into two opposing factions. After this war, the threat of nuclear annihilation hung over everybody's head. Europe could no longer afford another European war, or else it might be turned into a smoldering crater. So how could the leaders of Europe somehow prevent this from happening again? Winston Churchill came with the answer: create a United States of Europe. The first step towards this goal was
And this is really surprising because, he's Mr. Britain during the Second World War. He saved Britain. We're all about Britain. This is the country, but he wants a United States of Europe. And I've always found this to be an interesting contradiction in his political philosophy, which I've never quite been able to square.
Set out in the Schuman Declaration in 1950. It stipulated a plan to combine Europe politically and economically, starting with the coal and steel industries. Why coal and steel? Because they were the backbone of war. They were needed to build tanks, ships, and guns. If these markets were combined between countries, it would tie your war production directly with that of your enemy. This made war not only unthinkable, but also impossible. And this union would have to start with the two biggest rivals in Europe, Germany and France. And so in 1951 they signed the Treaty of Paris, a treaty that would mark the beginning of the European Union. 4 more countries answered the call of peace. Along with Germany and France, there were the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg and Italy, forming the European Coal and Steel Community. The Coal and Steel Community reduced tariffs on coal and steel, increased the trade of these goods tenfold between member countries, and created over 100,000 jobs. But it also had its failures. One of the goals was to create an integrated energy market, not just for coal, but also to include oil, gas, and nuclear. But they only achieved collaboration on nuclear. The European Coal and Steel Community wanted to prevent large corporations from dominating the coal and steel markets, as this had helped Hitler rise to power. It did so by preventing cartels from forming, and while this action did assure lower prices for its citizens, large corporations still emerged if they were simply more competitive than their rivals. As the years passed, it became clear that the coal and steel community was becoming outdated, and 2 new ideas sprung up. France wanted to create an atomic energy community so that the 6 countries could work together to generate nuclear energy for its citizens. Germany, Belgium, Luxembourg and the Netherlands wanted to create a common market where goods, services and people could be exchanged without tariffs or border controls. So how did they reconcile these 2 ideas? Well, they did both, of course. The European Atomic Energy Community oversaw nuclear energy, and the European Economic Community, or EEC, oversaw economic integration.
And this was the beginning of the end, because they should have just stuck to trade. And you'll see why later.
The EEC's first goal was to create a common price level for agricultural goods and create a customs union. You might be wondering, what the hell is a customs union? Basically, it means that the trade barriers between the 6 EEC countries would be removed on certain products, but if anyone from outside the EEC wanted to trade with these countries, they would be paying the same tariff in each country. So let's say, for example, you are a French baker who wants to sell your croissant to Germany. Well, just for crossing that border, your customer has to pay an extra tax, a tariff, just for buying a French croissant. But with the EEC, that tariff was removed between the 2 countries. There would be no extra tax to pay for your croissants, and you would pay as much as you would for a German croissant. It also meant that if, for example, an English baker wanted to sell his croissant to either Germany or France, then in both countries the same tariff would apply, meaning that neither country had a disadvantage based on import taxes, thus making it easier for companies to do business in the EEC. Over the years, Europe became ever closer. Economies became more interconnected, governments worked together, and trade between the countries was increasing. But there was one person with whom this development just did not sit right. President Charles de Gaulle, the war hero who led the French government in exile during World War II. De Gaulle was a French nationalist, and he believed France was handing over too much power to the EEC. You see, up until this point, whenever countries decided for more integration, the 6 EEC countries would give authority over such matters to the European institutions, basically creating a sort of European government. This was facilitated by the USA and the United Kingdom, who helped guide Europe towards more integration. And it's especially this last part that did not sit well with de Gaulle. Why would the UK, a country in decline who was losing more and more of its colonies every year, and the USA, a country an ocean away, determine European affairs? De Gaulle proposed a new course for Europe. The UK, USA and NATO would have no more power in Europe. Power would be taken away from the EEC and turned back to the governments of the member states. And France would retake its role as the superpower in the world by dominating this new Western Europe. You can see how the rest of Europe was not so eager to replace the USA with France. Yeah, did you notice how half of Europe is gobbled up by this giant superpower right across our border? We need NATO. Stop trying to rule Europe. After years of negotiations, President de Gaulle pulled out of the EEC in 1965, practically shutting it down. The EEC needed a unanimous decision on any action it took, and without France there would always be one vote missing. So the countries of Europe did what they do best: compromise. They agreed that France would retake its seat on the EEC if 1. Any EEC country would be allowed to veto any EEC plans if it was a very important national interest, even if the majority voted in favor. 2. Create a common agricultural policy in the EEC that set the prices for fruits, vegetables, sugar and cereals. And 3. The EEC must ask approval on certain important topics from the member countries themselves. And so, the idea of a united Europe had overcome its first obstacle. Come back next time to see how Europe moves forward and watch as the European community expands to other nations.
So, how does Europe unite? Well, here's the timeline. Uniting East and West. It all starts with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the dissolution and gradual fading out of the gradual fading out, dissolution, I should say, I have that in reverse order, of the Soviet Union. So 1992 comes along. There's a criteria implemented for any country who wants to join the EU to do so. They have to be democracies. This is why Vatican City, for example, can never be a member of the European Union. If you've had me for comparative politics, and if you have an opening in your schedule for the fall, please consider signing up. Political Science 124. Just for ICC. This doesn't apply to Lincoln College, I should add. This is going out to both schools. This is why, though, Vatican City, the Pope is the king and the CEO of Vatican City. Vatican City is not a democracy. They have to have a functioning market economy. Now, believe it or not, Vatican City actually does have that. And they have to have the ability to implement EU laws. So in 1998, they begin formal negotiations on enlargement of the European Union. And they agree on bringing in 10 new countries: Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Malta, Poland, Slovakia, and Slovenia, where Melania Trump is from, if I'm not mistaken. And then in 2007, we have Bulgaria and Romania join, and in 2013, 5 years later, Croatia. So these countries, again, they vary in size and population, but they all are represented by the European Union. Bosnia and this country, I see, it doesn't matter if I'm with you guys or if I'm not. I still can't talk. Have a smaller population. Montenegro also, 600,000 people as of 2018, and you have a country like Turkey. Turkey is not in the club as of yet, and there's a menagerie of reasons why that is the case that I won't get into right now. But the population and the size varies. Turkey is obviously a much bigger country than Montenegro. So let's go back to the beginning here. As Mr. Schwarzenegger, it wasn't actually him, guys, if anybody thinks it was Arnold Schwarzenegger, signed this European coal and steel community. The European steel and coal community, again, was to sort of handcuff nations to each other, steel and coal being what was primarily used in war at the time. They wanted to make sure that no country could get a monopoly on it and start doing the things that Germany did that led up to World War I and World War II. Then you have the treaties of Rome, which formed the economic community and the European Atomic Energy Community. Then you have the European Single Act, which creates the single market. So it's free-flowing goods all around the European Union area. The Maastricht Treaty, the Treaty of Amsterdam, Nice, Lisbon in 2009 will delve into these things. And if I don't delve into them to your satisfaction, email me and I'll make a separate lesson on one of these things, on whatever one you want. So there is an EU Charter for fundamental rights, and this should be in my apartment. I think there's a hole in the, I don't know, somewhere, either that or the birds built a nest in the pipes outside, but there's a nest of birds that live like right behind this flag in the wall. Sometimes they kick up, and I just I don't know. So there's your tangent for the day. The EU's activities, they believe in, I mean, it's the same thing. We're seeing some overriding themes here. They want equality. They want solidarity, citizens' rights, freedoms. You should see some similar themes here between the European Union and the United Nations.
One moment.
And now Siri says one more. Okay. And the Commonwealth of Nations. So there's all these international organizations kind of want the same goals. I don't think these guys say out and out world peace, but and it's beneficial for them to be in a block like they are for the following reason. I'm just going to look up the population. Well, we know what the population is of Montenegro from earlier in the lecture. So let's just pretend that I drew that this looks nice, and that this is Montenegro, right? All these countries in Europe are smaller, are weaker, significantly weaker, because since the end of the Second World War, we, the United States, have been primarily responsible for the defense of the continent. Would a country like Montenegro of 600,000 folks be inclined to be taken more or less seriously than us with 329 million people? I would think we would pay more attention to the United States than Montenegro. On the other hand, would a block of all the European countries, with a combined population of 446 millions, would they be taken more seriously? Absolutely. So this block that they're all in works towards that purpose. Their demands are heard. They are taken much more seriously, the 446 millions, than, like, say, the 600,000 Montenegrins. Yeah, it's much more difficult, to ignore this than it would be this. And that's another reason they all still stick together. So yeah, this is right up to date. They took the UK right out of here. So yeah, we can see. The countries have varying levels. Malta, 500,000. Luxembourg, all the way up to 82.9 millions in Germany. So this used to be over 500,000 before the UK left. So we come to the 2008 financial crisis that starts in the United States, obviously. There's a pretty coordinated response from the leaders of the European Union. Although, was the response particularly effective? I'll leave that for you to decide. So they make a commitment to financial stability within the union, and they use these crisis management tools to kind of reform their existing rules and their financial structures. So they come up with this European Stability Mechanism, which is a fund used to help countries in extraordinary economic difficulties. That should read bailout money. And there are new laws for the stability of the banks, and they enter into banking union. So there's this supervision of the European Union of banks and really a mechanism to close these failing banks down. And there's supposed better economic governance. There's a European semester, so they have a coordination of their public budgets and a fiscal compact treaty where they all commit to sound public finances. Now, does any government in the world actually have sound public finances? I'll leave that for you to decide. But it gets better, because I am going to explain this plan to you. This Fund for Strategic Investments. They have mobilized 439 billion euros. I just looked it up. 439 euros would be in the ballpark of 480 to 500 million United States dollars. So as I said, it translates roughly into 450 billion US dollars, which exceeded their expectations. So the plans have supported the creation of over 1 million jobs, and they figure that'll rise to 1.7 million jobs by 2022. Now, this pandemic probably threw it off. It's probably not going to happen that way. So more than 1 million of these small and medium-sized companies are supposed to benefit from the EU gross domestic product by their improved access to finance and this plan. So in keeping with how things would go in a regular classroom, I have to step away for just a moment. But Mrs. Parker is going to step in and play this video on the European Strategic Investment Fund for you. And she'll stop it after 2 minutes. Over to you, Mrs. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. He is helping me with the project, so I really appreciate it. So here is this video. I hope you enjoy it.
Years of crisis have posed a threat to Europe's potential for innovative growth and dulled our competitive edge. Competitiveness relies on investment. In Europe, good projects currently struggle to find investment. Money is available in the system, but economic uncertainty stops many investors from taking risks. The investment plan for Europe is putting competitiveness back on the agenda. Over the next 3 years, the European Investment Bank and the European Commission will mobilise over 315 billion euros of total investment in support of higher-risk, value-adding projects for Europe's future. Fuelled by an EU guarantee and the EIB's financial and operational strength, the European Fund for Strategic Investments, or EFSI, will back loans to infrastructure projects to enable good ideas to travel from A to B quickly. Europe will be able to invest more in renewable energies and resource efficiency to power our homes and businesses cleanly. EFSI will support urban development, environmental and social projects, shaping the way we live and work sustainably. We will invest in education, research and development to inspire future generations and find solutions to improve lives innovatively. And we will reinforce our backing to Europe's many small businesses to ensure they continue to be a driver of employment constantly. Together, this is a recipe for global competitiveness. We are backing growth-enhancing, job-generating investment in Europe, taking more risk where necessary, and giving projects the investment boost they need to come to life that bit sooner. The investment plan for Europe is putting our money back to work for the benefit of all Europeans.
All right, guys, I hope you learned a lot, and here is Mr. Parker back.
Thank you. Well, I'll show you what she had me doing when she's finished with it. So that is the European Investment Fund. And let me see with that. Yeah, there we go. We're back on track. So, how they responded to the financial crisis in 2008. They threw out the rule book, made a better one. So they made new laws to ensure that banks have this adequate capital that they need and better risk control. It kind of like in the U.S. They insulated the banks, and there was this whole mentality of too big to fail. If you remember, John McCain in the U.S. Senate talked about that in terms of Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, excuse me. Now it's too big to fail. Code for too big to be allowed to fail. I'll leave that for you to decide. And the European Central Bank supervises more or less 130 of these, the most important banks that the Union deems to be so, and these national bank supervisors really work together closely. So a Europe-wide single resolution board can decide to wind down a failing bank, and this is backed here by a fund that banks pay into and ensure the taxpayers don't have to pick up the bill. All right, so how does the EU spend its money? Let me see if I can zoom in a little on this. Maybe not, but that's okay. Oh, here we go. So here it is. 39% agriculture, rural development, fisheries, environment, and others, security and citizenship, 2%, 17.7 billion euros, but that only makes up 2% of the union's budget. Global Europe, so kind of undertaking UN type activities, as you can see, international cooperation, humanitarian aid, foreign policy instruments, 6% administration cost. Most of this, a good third of this here, is for economic and territorial and social cohesion, so vocational training, low carbon economy, working towards that, research and innovation, employment, and the rest of this is competitiveness for growth and jobs, so education, transport, networks, and technology. So they have a rather large budget as of 2019, 165.8 billion. Now it's going to be smaller this year, and we'll learn later more about that, and that is in large part because of the UK leaving. They were one of the major contributors to the budget of the European Union. So it's a large sum. It's about 1% of the wealth generated by the economies of the member states every year. I would challenge that statistic. But if that's what they say, that's what they say. But I would challenge that statistic. And I know a couple of you, like Sarah Sutton and Gus Ganson, will look it up and get a correct read on that and let us all know. So this is what Mrs. Parker had me doing.
Okay, so first off, you wanted me to explain it to you guys what What we're doing for my school, because I'm a music teacher, is we're supposed to send pictures to a person who's good with technology at our school with signs saying how much we miss our students and stuff, which we all do. So I had one with stickers, but the stickers didn't turn out right. And then also I didn't realize when I had it up, it was supposed to be flipped around. So Mr. Parker had to do this a couple of times till he got those letters right. And I added the stickers and colored them in. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I'm sure he misses you all too.
I do.
So
I really
there
do.
you go.
I really do. This is not ideal, and this is not the situation either Kaylee or I envisioned for the last half of the school year. Is it?
No.
No. And that actually is a pretty good note to leave it on. I do miss you all. I miss seeing you. I miss being in the class with you. So be kind to each other. Be kind to your families. Take it easy on yourselves. We're just going to call this European Union Part 1. And there will certainly be another video because this is a rather lengthy slideshow the European Union put together. So we'll leave it there for now. Part 2 probably is coming up in the next class period, if not right now. But we'll leave it there for now. All right. Bye.